So today I'm going to talk about how to run old DOS games under your Windows 8 system. Now this really doesn't differ too much from the Windows 7 or other previous versions of Windows, except the fact we're going to cover how to put a tile on your desktop that has the icon for your particular DOS game. It'll automatically launch an DOS emulator that lets you run old DOS games. So in order to do that, we're going to go over here to the desktop and we're going to go to the computer. Now I've already downloaded a program that is in the description for this video, DOSBox. But first we're going to talk about other programs. For example, if I go to the Microsoft game and I go to Flight Simulator 9, okay, you can see I can pin that directly to the Start menu. And that's because it's a installed program. Any program that gets installed using the regular Windows install, where it gets installed in your programs, you should be able to find the actual software for it. So if I go over here to the programs and I say look here, and if I go down to Flight Simulator, actually it's Microsoft Flight Simulator, there's a Combat Flight Simulator, the one I was talking about, that it gets installed. Regular DOS programs don't use this to install. They don't get installed here as a DOS program because they don't use the Windows installer. They're just too old. They predate it. So what does that mean? Well, it means you can't create a tile that actually points to a DOS program. But I'm going to show you how you can actually without extra software. So now, if you want to, let's talk a little bit about how you can run DOS within Windows, any version of Windows. I'm going to the command line. I did it with Windows R, the Windows key and R, and it brings up the command line. And I said CMD, and now we're virtually in DOS. And let's talk a little bit about that. There's a lot of talk about virtualization, how you can run Windows, an earlier version of Windows underneath Windows because machines are so fast. Or if you have a Mac, you can run Windows, virtualization. Well, we're using DOS commands here to change the directory to the games and everything. For example, I'm going here and changing it to this program, and I'm going to say, look, here's the directory. I'm going to look at it, and there's a list of all the files and everything. And you'll see that these files are the same files here that we have over here. If we scroll down to the zip files down here, you'll see that these files here match up with the files there. So you look at the same exact place. One's through a DOS window, a command line, and one's through regular Windows interface. So what can we do with this? Or what's the importance about it? Well, what it means is that if I wanted to run something for DOS, if I came just here and I just wanted to run something, I could sit there and type in the directory and the program name. If I change directory, for example, to Galaxian here, and then I run the game Galaxian, and it tells me an error. It says I cannot run this because it doesn't have all the other things, the virtual PC exactly. It's really just a DOS prompt. It's a command line prompt. It's not really a whole PC running with extra memory assigned to it and everything like that. If I click it here directly, this app can't run in your PC. Go to your software manufacturer. Anyways, the point of it is that you need something more than that, and that's where DOSBox comes in at. So we're going to go back here to DOSBox. So we're going to take a look at it right here, and you first download it and extract it. And then after you've done that, it goes ahead and just puts it in a directory. It doesn't do an install. It just puts it right there on your PC. So here we are. We're in the DOSBox directory, and you'll see here's DOSBox.exe, and it has a config file. And if you look about it, it talks all about the configuration. There's 100 different configurations, like full screen, true or false. There's sound card settings. There's size of window settings. There's machine speed settings, all that. It pretty much does a good job all on its own, although the machine speed is probably the one where if it can't detect the game that you're going to try and run, you're sort of lost there. It's this machine will run 1,000 times faster than originally intended. But there's a way to get around that with certain keystrokes, and we'll get to that in a minute. But if you look here, there's CPU. Here's where we talk about how to speed up or slow down. It's controlled F11, control F12. It tries to do an auto detect, but forget that. Mixer, it's talking about devices. Here's the sound mixer and all that stuff. By the way, these are a lot of things you used to have to do manually years ago to configure your stuff to run. There's MIDI integration as well for MIDI files. One of the major cards years ago would also have, besides their sound drive, would have a MIDI interface that you could hook up to. And if we go down a little further, there's Sound Blaster, the de facto card years ago, and still is pretty popular out there for high-end stuff and everything. It was a Sound Blaster 16 though back then, And you had to actually change jumper on your cards to set all these IRQ and all that stuff to correctly and everything. Gravis ultrasound was another one, but they've chose to emulate here in the DOSBox. So you can use your PC speaker. All these different things are configurable if you want to get into it. But pretty much leave it the way it is and everything. It'll detect joysticks, all that. Serial ports. A lot of PCs don't have serial ports anymore, but it'll do that as well. But what we really want to get down to is after we talk about the memory here, it also emulates certain types of memory that older games used. And we get down to the very, very bottom, and you'll see that we have this auto exec, which is this is how to mount your drive. In other words, this emulator needs to point to a different drive. In this case, it's going to be the games directory under DOS is going to mount, and it's going to pretend like it's a C drive so that we can get to stuff. So besides the memory and all that, we're going to talk. We're going to see how it points to that so we can run our games as if they're sitting on a C drive. So now we're going to go ahead and run DOSBox, and you'll see it comes up, and it has this nice little black screen. It tells you a little bit about how to speed up and slow down stuff, but it shows how you mounted the drive so that now you're looking at the same directory as we talked about here, that DOS and DOS like we talked about earlier. So again, I'm going to go ahead here and say, okay, now I'm going to see, I'm going to verify what I'm looking at. So if I do a directory listing, it should match what's on the right hand side over here. So if I come over here and I say directory/P for pausing for pagination, I see them in the old structure. It shows exactly the same names, except for the ones that are longer than 8 characters. So the old DOS only could have 8-character file names. So that you'll see that ampersand or that tilde 1 or 2 next to the name. But basically, you'll see the same exact software here that you see over there. So what does that mean to us? Well, we're going to now go ahead and run some of those games within DOSBox. And the first one we're going to do is Galaxian. It's an old Space Invaders type game. It came out after Space Invaders and did some improvements. So if I run Galaxian, you'll see here that it's running fine within DOSBox. It's running really fast though, so I'm going to shut it down real quick. And that's because DOSBox didn't understand the speed automatically, so you're going to have to do it yourself. Well, we're going to be able to do that by running the program and pressing the F11 to slow it down. But what's really important, we're going to talk about how to run this from a link rather than having to go to DOSBox and type in Galaxian for each one of your games. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click on DOSBox, okay, we're going to say pin to start. We could do that, but then we have just an icon or link directly to that. So we're going to do what's called a shortcut, the same old shortcut you're used to seeing and everything. So when we right click on it, we'll have a shortcut that we're going to be able to pin. And it's very important that we're going to be able to do this because we'll be able to modify the icon. So if we go over here and we say create shortcut, you'll see that it creates this. The first thing we're going to do after we do this is so we don't get confused, because we're going to have maybe dozens of these. We're going to rename that, and this is going to be our Galaxian shortcut. So it's going to say, oh, this is really a shortcut to DOSBox, but we're naming it Galaxian. So now what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go here into properties, and you'll see right here, here's the line of instructions of the computer that says, oh, go run DOSBox.exe. Well, we're going to add some parameters that DOSBox is designed to take advantage of. The -C is the command. So if we go in here and we say -C Galaxian directory, and then the Galaxian, and we say OK, theoretically, this is going to go ahead and run Galaxian as soon as we do it. We're also going to change the icon. So if we click here and say change icon, you'll see that it has the DOSBox icon. Well, we're going to change that as well because it gets that icon from the DOSBox exe file. It's embedded in that file. But what you can do is you can actually browse for other icon files. You just click the browse button here, and you can go find other different programs and everything that have it. Now, you may or may not have any. Now, what I did is I went out to the internet and downloaded one. If you click over here and you say, oh, forget just looking at ICO files or exe files, if you click here and you go down to all files, you'll see some of the other ones. Now, I downloaded this GIF over here, but then I used Paint to convert it, and because GIF isn't accessible as an icon, so you can't use that. But so we go down here to Paint, and we open it up, and we say, oh, look, I want to save as a BMP file, because a BMP file, Windows will recognize that as an icon. I already have one here that I already did, but I'm going to go ahead and overwrite it and say, okay, boom, and do that. So now I have this BMP file. So now if I take that file and I say that's going to be my file, you notice it's now the icon for this. So if I click on OK, and I click on OK again, you'll see that the Galaxian shortcut, which is really DOSBox with the command line, is now has that as a icon. If I say click pin to start menu, guess what? Now I have a oops, I got two of them because I already done this earlier, so I'm going to delete these. And let's do that again. Let's go back over here, and I'm going to delete that again because just to make sure I don't have it already pointing somewhere else. So if I click on this, I say pin to start, and I come over here, and there we are, Galaxians. Theoretically now, when I click on this, it'll run DOSBox with the command line parameters that will start up Galaxian. So let's see if I'm right. So you're going to see how we're going to be able to go out here and do the a link like this for every single DOS game that's going to point to DOSBox.exe. It's going to use that shortcut to send it a parameter which is going to launch the proper game. So you don't have to have a whole bunch of different copies of DOSBox. You don't have to do anything. You just simply click on it and it will launch the game. And as we do that, you'll see that Galaxian comes up here in the background. It has all the normal instructions and things like that. And then it actually even emulates sound. You'll hear it here in a minute in the background and everything. It'll actually do everything you want to do. It's running at thousands of times faster than you want. I'm pressing F11 to slow it down. We're down to 254 cycles. I can increase it a little bit, trying to make it playable and everything until you find if you're on 1,000 cycles, it seems to be close to the original DOS speed and everything on my particular machine. Now it depends upon your machine, but there you go. You can start playing your game and everything within a DOS box from the tile on your desktop. No need to type things in, no need to do anything. Once you have it set up, you can play it anytime you click on it and everything. So that's Galaxian, and we're going to cover some other DOS programs here, including some LucasArts that doesn't use DOSBox, but you're going to be able to use some other programs that are very popular to run within Windows from your tile desktop.